Good morning to the scant few audience out there. It's the I Stand Correct podcast, brought to you by me, John. I do this just for fun. There's no other reason for me doing this. Did pick a spicy title and thumbnail this time about the lady killed up in Minnesota. What's her name again? It's not Rachel, is it? Her last name's Good. I remember that. Mike is wrong, he says.
You know, I actually did check that before the show started. You can check it. You can check on there, and it'll say what microphone are you using. It'll say Rodecaster, and you'll say that's good. That's the one I want. But it doesn't matter. I've even disabled the internal microphone before. I've turned it off. You know, it doesn't matter. You want me to restart the show? I know everyone's really kind of a stickler about making sure the show is just as good as it needs to be. So, all right, I'll ask you to take a very small dose of a roofie. Here we go again. All right, welcome to the I Stand Correct podcast. If you couldn't tell, that was my passive-aggressive way of punishing you for saying I sound like crap. You know, I do the best that I can. It's the show that I do normally on Monday, but today I'm doing it on Wednesday because I did a show also on Thursday, and it's actually not easy to accumulate memes. You know, I can't accumulate enough memes for a show. Between Thursday and Monday, you know, I'm just not scrolling enough to be doing that. I'm actually trying to be scrolling less. I've basically put down Instagram, except for intentional scrolling for intentional memes for the show. I'm trying not to be on there as much. So it's more difficult than ever. What happened? Now I'm pregnant, Salamander said. Well, I'm going to say that was me from Lauren. It wasn't me. He says he wants a new song. Looks like Elijah's here. That's good. Good to see you. You have the voice of an angle now. I meant what I said. Hopefully it's an acute angle. I guess my guitar playing is beautiful. Well, at least I'm getting bullshit criticism and bullshit compliments. I can take that, I guess. How's everybody doing this morning? It's weird to see you on a Wednesday. As I said, this is me just trying to catch up with you know, the memes and still producing a show for you. I wanted to talk about Renee Nicole Good, though. I had an experience on Sunday where I was just out and about and happened to come across the local ICE protest. And it wasn't big. It's just a bunch of people out there, losers on a Sunday morning. Sunday is a good sign because maybe some of them have a job. I doubt it. But it was a bunch of old women and twinks. And I saw one like in a cow costume. I saw someone else show up in it with a vicious looking dog with a sign around his neck that said "Eat Ice" or whatever. And it just got me thinking, as most things do. But what did she die for? Renee Nicole Good. Did she accomplish anything? No. The policy of the United States is still to export the extra people that aren't supposed to be here. Donald Trump, other people are not looking to her as a shock to the conscience that we ought to stop this, because her death had nothing to do with migrants. It had everything to do with this country's wrong idea that a valid form of protest is actually interfering with law enforcement officers. I thought these guys were losers. The ones out there who are prancing around, they have no one to love them at home, so they need random honks from strangers. Kind of like how I get on here. Right. I can really understand the pathology of these people playing to a small audience because, hello, but this country has this idea that like you can be against an idea and that means you ought to throw down and get in there. And you can believe that, I guess, but you're going to get what you get and you're going to get killed, is what that means. And this isn't a case of a woman dying for what she believed in because, she had a vehicle, a deadly object, pointed at a ICE agent who felt like his life was threatened. It would have been any cop would have done the exact same thing. And now she's dead. The left is trying to make her into this George Floyd like character. They want the country to burn. They want there to be riots. They want this to be a flashpoint that changes the culture against Donald Trump and against ICE. But it's not happening because most people can see that this Renee Nicole Good is not someone that most of us respect because we wouldn't make that decision that she made. Now, I'll argue that most of us wouldn't try to pass a fake 20 at a gas station and swallow all the fentanyl before we get arrested. I don't know. Maybe there's a good portion of the population who would react that way. I'm not trying to say who that would be. This woman had kids, and instead of being with her children and with her family and home safe, she got radicalized by the media, her social media, and the media on TV. It convinced her that she lived in a German wartime state and that she needed to go out there and do these things. I guess I'm all for protesting. I hate the government so much that you've got to be able to protest, right? I don't want protests to be put down. I don't want people to be arrested and jailed simply for protesting. But when you actively interfere with these people and when you get in the way of their cars, you're asking for trouble. That's not a legitimate form of protest. And at that point, you're committing criminal acts and you're going to be treated as a criminal. Okay. Why is it that we're not looking to the civil rights movement of the 60s? I know that had its share of violence as well, but, there were big voices out there who were teaching passive resistance. Passive resistance is not aiming a car at a law enforcement officer. And this is, I suppose, the biggest point I would make if I had gone out there and talked to those protesters. So for you, what this issue is about is illegal immigration. Well, what do you want to do about it? And I can imagine these people saying we need to abolish ICE. I think that would be a fairly common response. Well, the problem is you abolish ICE, you get rid of this federal agency, you still have Title 8 of United States Code still exists. So you would just have some other federal law enforcement agency that would be next up to bat to do this. So you could abolish ICE, but then who's going to be out there? I mean, ICE is the one specifically tasked to do it, but you'd have the FBI out there. It would be some other federal law enforcement agency who would be in charge of enforcing Title 8 of the U.S. Code. So the problem really isn't executive agencies, okay? The problem is the law. And I'm totally okay with people not liking the law in their country. I don't agree with them in this case, but you need to change the law. We're a nation governed by ourselves. We have the power to do this. Okay. At one point, we coalesced around a singular idea to the point where we amended the Constitution. Somehow, the teetotalers in this country absolutely nailed a prohibition movement where we outlawed alcohol. Can you imagine that? That happened in this country. So we have the ability to do great things in terms of legislation in this country. We have that ability, especially when we hold our lawmakers accountable. We can pass a law that makes alcohol illegal in the Constitution, a document which is designed to restrain the government. We used it to restrain ourselves. We could do something as insane as that. So if you want to change the way that undocumented people are in this country, illegal aliens, if you want to change that, change the United States Code, change the Constitution, go through all these steps that we have. See, people seem to just completely ignore that. They say it's on the president. I just got into another Facebook or Instagram fight with someone else about who really passed the Civil Rights Acts in the 60s. I said that it was really sympathy for Kennedy having been killed that really got a lot of that work done in the Congress. There was a lot of people who were against the civil rights bill that was sitting in a committee at the time Kennedy was killed. And after he died, no one could say no to the guy. And because people will fight about anything. Somebody's really going to bat for LBJ and saying he's the one that got the work done. And I'm just like, Congress did it. It's not the president. I'm like, oh, but he was really pushing them. Like, they didn't need pushing, you know? So my point is that Congress has completely abdicated their power, particularly in this term. They're not doing any of the things that MAGA Republicans want them to do, like putting in voter ID laws, or making this a country that will be robust enough to survive the reprisals from the Progressive Party after Donald Trump is gone. They've laid down all of their responsibility. They've laid down all of their accountability, and they've laid down all their power, simply shrugging and saying, it's the president. Well, okay, so let's blame presidents. So Renee Nicole Good died because she believed, stupidly, that Title VIII of the United States Code ought not exist. Well, Joe Biden never believed that, or at least his handlers didn't, because there was a time when Joe Biden had the ability to fundamentally change the way that immigration law was done in this country, and he didn't do it. And Barack Obama certainly had 8 long years in which he could drive all kinds of sweeping changes to healthcare and other things, but he never did it with immigration law. And I made this point to someone else on Instagram, part of the reason why I also need to get off of Instagram. And they're like, well, neither did Bush, and neither did the other Bush. And it's just like, well, one wouldn't expect them to do that. With we're the Republicans are the ones who are in favor of Title VIII. We're the ones who are in favor of illegal aliens being booted out of the country. So why are you throwing that back at me? You're missing the point. My point is that Renee Nicole Good died for a cause that even these presidents didn't give a shit about. They may have talked a big game about immigration, but ultimately Obama, Biden, and Clinton, who spoke out of both sides of his mouth about it, because if you go back and watch what he said in the 90s, he said that, America was in danger from being overrun by illegal immigrants, to appeal to the Republican base that he needed to capture away from Bush. They had the power to change that. There's been a lot of power held by a lot of progressives in our lifetime, and they have never done anything about it. And I'm going to tell you why. It's not because they care or don't care about undocumented immigrants or illegal people or whatever. They don't give a shit about that. For them, it always has to be a political point to make. That if you don't vote for me in the upcoming election, Republicans are going to take power away, and they're going to deport your friends and your neighbors, and they're going to separate families. That's what they care about. They care about their continued power, their continued election. And so they're never going to change it, because they know that it's something that Americans will fight each other about. And so they need Americans fighting each other to maintain that power. If it was really about caring about not tearing apart families, fundamentally changing the way this country looks at illegal immigration, they would do something about it. Unfortunately, chumps like Renee Nicole Good don't realize that, hey, not even my own party believes in what I believe in, and maybe I ought not go down and lay down my life for a cause that someone like Barack Obama, an extremist, or Joe Biden, to the extent that he was aware of anything, he was fairly extreme, or Hillary Clinton or any of these other people. They don't care about this. Why am I going to go risk my life and get killed for this cause that my leaders didn't believe in? And you can be a better person than your leaders are. I hope that people listening to me, and I hope that I'm a better person than Donald Trump. I would like to think so. But at that point, you've got to realize, well, we need better leaders. We need people who are going to go in there and actually change something. I'm not going to change anything on the side of the road driving the Subaru around ICE agents. It's not going to do anything. I am better off with my children and my family. And something else that's interesting about the people who are trying to angelicize Renee Nicole Good is that she lost custody of her children. How is it that we can respect a woman who lost custody for her children and was going out there and behaving like an animal for attention or to make herself feel better, to avenge her own hurt and angry feelings about ICE actions? How can we angelicize someone like that? I'm getting so sick of all the pictures that we see of Renee Nicole Good and all these celebrities wearing little buttons that say "Be Good." She cared about Somalians getting rousted out of Minneapolis. She didn't care about her own kids. She wasn't taking good care of her own family. And just Renee Nicole Good as a type of person, just for some irony. This got sent to me late last night. Didn't really have time to turn it into coherent thesis. But something that's ironic about the progressive woman in general is that progressive women will have children and then divorce and then do everything in their power, their leveraged power, leveraged by the court, to attain full custody of their children and not let the fathers have anything to do with those children. It's very, very common. It's not universal. It's not absolute, but it's very common. And these same women will complain about ICE agents separating families. The irony is replete. And so that's about all I have to say about Renee Nicole Good. She was a chump, and she died a chump's death. And she is absolutely an exemplar of this country's real problem, real dissociation from reality about what it means to peacefully protest, because you cannot get in there and throw down with the cops. This is not Grand Theft Auto. You don't have extra lives. Getting in there and interfering is a way to go to jail, to pick up charges, hopefully, in a civilized world. And when you're bearing down on an officer with a car, they are going to shoot you every time. How many times have we talked about that on Comm Center, on Hard Time, in jest, where I said, we've got a dangerous active shooter. Tamir Rice is somebody that I thought probably ought to have been mowed down. It was a fake gun, but if it had been a real gun, I don't think a police officer should shoot him. I think they should just run him down with a car. When I worked at the prison, I was in a perimeter car that drove around the outside. I always talk about that to Jake on a Hard Time, about how his jail doesn't have a perimeter car, and all these jails that have security problems don't have perimeter cars. I'm in the perimeter car. I just drive around, just look at the fence, make sure nobody's coming out. I've got an AR-15 in there. I've got a shotgun in there, and I've got a Smith & Wesson pistol. And but I realized if anyone's coming over this fence and running away, I'm not going to have time to drive up to them, get out of the car, sling out the rifle, get a shot ready. I'm not going to do that. I'm just going to run them down. Because a car is a 2,000-pound, 3,000-pound bullet. And what's most appalling is that the way that this is being used, of course, it always is by the Democrat Party. And the reason I bring that up is because Bill Clinton and Hillary Clinton have refused to show up for their depositions. Hillary's supposed to be deposed in Congress today. She's not going to show up. They sent a letter saying that part of the reason they weren't going to show up is because of the massive abuses of executive power in this country. The most shocking and searing of which was the death of Renee Nicole Good at the hands of federal agents. So we have politicians who are exploiting this to distract from the fact that Bill Clinton's in a lot of hot tubs with Jeffrey Epstein, saying, but what about Renee Nicole Good getting run down by federal agents? That's literally in their letter about why they're not going to be deposed, because this is their way of standing up to the madness. We literally have politicians trying to exploit her death for their own personal benefit, their own personal gain, because, why aren't they going in front of Congress and being deposed? They can do that behind a closed door. It doesn't have to be a public event. That's something that they could probably negotiate. But it contributes to this overall idea that you can go out there and fuck around without finding out. I hate that phrase. It's been way overused, but it's essentially what happened in this case. So let's go to some of the people in the chat so that I can get all worked up and I can ruin my day. I'm going to go ahead and just guess that it's Taliu. She loves to get under my skin. Some people, Taliu, have suggested that you are just here to do that. I don't think that your disposition or your bearing is such that you seem like someone who's an agitator. Not at all. Oh, Elijah says, well, got to go to work now. Catch you guys later. He was barely here. Lauren says, I was just wondering what the plan for their kids was after her and her wife got arrested. Well, somebody else already had custody of those kids. She did not have custody of them. She may have actually, but I just know she lost custody of them at one point for being abusive. Probably more likely neglectful. You can lose your children over neglect. Wouldn't I know about that? But they say that she was abusive. I'm not really looking into it because it doesn't matter. And the reason why it doesn't matter is because nobody's going to care. Why am I going to pursue, as far as one can pursue, the situation with Renee Nicole Good when ultimately you can say that to people and say, well, you're out here protesting over the death of a child abuser? They'll shrug about that. They're not going to be like, my God, maybe this is more nuanced than I think. And maybe I shouldn't be out here protesting ICE on behalf of Renee Nicole Good. They won't care. And frankly, the thing that they won't say out loud is like, well, I lost custody of my kids for abusing them too. So, John, don't talk about Joe, you dog-faced pony soldier. Yeah, I never understood that. I remember when he was when he was a little more cogent, but no less coherent when he would say things like that. Corn Pop is a bad dude and all that. All right. The jokes today. Makes me uncomfortable for some reason, mostly the itching. Okay, people are talking about a really weird thing. The audience. I didn't do it. I watched that footage and was so confusing. Why did they react that way, and what were they stooping for? I'm not sure what you mean by that. Apparently, she was blocking the road with a car, so it caused the interaction between she and the agents. Yeah, she got, well, I mean, we've all seen the video, but the point is you get out there with your car and now you're interacting with police officers inside your car and you're refusing orders to stop and get out of the car. And you think, especially at the prompting of your wife, that you can just drive away. Drive away, baby, is what her wife said. You think you're driving around a bunch of police officers who are not in the protection of their cars, and even if they were, you're in a situation in which you could potentially run down a cop. Drew will tell you there. I think it was maybe a year or 2 years ago. Hillsborough County Sheriff's deputy was run over by a car. Everyone's, including the Clintons, are saying that that she was unarmed. They're saying that federal agents used extreme force against an unarmed mother. She was inside a big 2,000, 3,000 pound bullet. That's not unarmed. It's an improvised weapon. It's not the same thing as a gun or a knife, but it's something that is equally lethal. And yet you have the Clintons out there saying she was unarmed. Dr. G did analysis of the body language whenever, very enlightening. You should watch Dr. G every chance that you get. I didn't watch that one, and I like Dr. G. Something that's getting irritating for me is that I can see what he's doing, and it's chasing the news. Because now he's doing lots of things. Just whatever the biggest topic is, he drops a video on it. And I applaud him because it's the way to grow his channel. And his commentary is still very insightful and very good, but he's a body language analyst. And all of a sudden he's like reading Jeffrey Epstein emails and stuff. And his analysis and insights is still very good. But I feel like he's getting into a little bit of mission drift. But I guess I applaud him. And I look up to him as someone who's successful here. John had a shotgun, a rifle, and a 4-wheel drive. It was actually it was a Crown Vic is what it was. And a Smith & Wesson 38 Special. So you guys are all talking to each other. I'm not an agitator, just like you debate, you and discuss. I know. The QR code in the corner is a Venmo link for John. Yes, it has gotten to that point. What should I say about that? Thank you, Talia. I guess I don't mind holding out the hat for myself. Anyone who wants to leave me some money, I guess that would be nice. If you don't have to do it. I mean, many of you already pay for this content because you're members, and I certainly wouldn't expect you to shell out extra. It's just this channel's not monetized like ComCenter is, so there's no way for you to do super chats, etc. If you feel like giving, you can give, but there's no way to do it on this channel. So I do that so that you can do that if you want. Also, Eric hasn't podcasted in something like 6 weeks, and my paying job was the producer of Failure to Stop, and I think Ghostbed, uh, we love Ghostbed. Obviously, who wouldn't? But they pulled their funding at a certain point. They stopped being advertisers, which is they're well within their rights to do. It wasn't for any reason other than that they just felt their money was better spent elsewhere. And that's the money that made everything happen. And when that happened, I stopped getting paid. We were hoping for other advertisers, but they haven't materialized yet. And I don't know if I haven't talked to him. I don't know if Eric's intending to go back to work at some point or not. But that's where the money largely came from. Comp Center does make me a little money. I don't know. But a lot of people have been sort of, they've almost bullied me. They're like, put your Venmo out there or whatever. And then when it doesn't work for my various international fans, are like, well, it can't be your Cash App or whatever. It has to be this other thing. So I've been bullied. But I will say that Lauren has been generous in the past. So thank you to Lauren. Eric probably called Ghostbed to inquire and just kept talking over the person on the other end until they hung up. You're making fun of him, but Eric secured Ghostbed as a sponsor and as someone who's paying him to do podcasting for a long time. So maybe you don't like his interview style, but he certainly is someone who could be very convincing and can get things done. And it was to my benefit. He did go missing in action. I thought maybe he did a show this past Friday. I checked and I didn't see one. I'm not sure if he's coming back. I know that he loves podcasting. You never know what people are going through. At Com Center, we're kind of going through a similar slump where we're trying to evaluate what's worthwhile and what's not worth it and what's not. Speaking of Com Center, tomorrow night, Drew will appear on the Forensics channel. It's spelled with a U, like it's an Australian term or something. Let me see if I can find it so that I can show it to you. But it's a channel where I guess they have 4 people, and they do it's Forensic Room. I'm sorry, not Forensic Files or anything. But they do. I think there's 4 people on the show, and they debate things. I think that's the purpose of the channel, Forensic Room. But Drew is going to appear on this channel, and you can see what they talk about. More Lies by Karen Reed. Good grief. Unraveling the Karen Reed conspiracy. Kate Peter tells all on Shelling the Turtle Tales, that being about Turtle Boy. The lies and omissions in Karen Reed's lawsuit complaint. Chris Albert was in the chats, I guess, there. And John O'Keefe's close friend, Carrie Roberts. You could see that this is really all about Karen Reed and about Karen Reed. Drew is still locked in fighting the good fight. I think for John O'Keefe is the reason why he wakes up every day and feels compelled to do battle with these people. Also, pathologically, like me, Drew really likes being right, and he really likes being able to point out people who are wrong. But unlike me, Drew is willing to make himself miserable doing battle with these strangers who, for some reason, are still very consumed with the Karen Reed case. And maybe there's reason to continue talking about it. I'm sure the civil case and all that makes it very interesting and very compelling. And justice can still be done on behalf of John O'Keefe. I believe that's possible. It would sure be nice if Karen Reed could be held to account for some of the evil that she has done in this life. Not just the murder of John O'Keefe, but the destruction of many people's jobs and livelihoods. Some people helped her, like Michael Proctor certainly helped her ruin his life, but other people did not deserve to have their lives ruined by Karen Reed and her lawyer, who really took a scorched earth policy and didn't care how many people they tore down to get her off of involuntary vehicular manslaughter and 10 years behind bars. She faced a limited danger to her own self, and she didn't care how many people she hurt. So I get it. I get the sense of justice. Perhaps I've been accused of having an overdeveloped sense of justice that just comes from being a middle child. But Drew's in it. He's in the fight. He's in it to win it, even though people's uh, the things that people believe is largely based on beliefs. It's not based on facts. You can very rarely change a person's mind, especially once it becomes adversarial. Once you are literally fighting with someone, that just makes them double down. They've already fought for their beliefs. They've already fought for their side. They're not going to give up and fight for the other side or admit they were wrong. You're fighting human psychology there anymore, and it's something I don't necessarily have. I don't know, the will or the drive to do. I don't have the energy to pursue through or push through idiots who believe whatever they want to believe. It has nothing to do with facts of the case. And it's that way with everything. In fact, that's part of the major reason why some days I just don't want to podcast anymore. When I was looking into the Denise Amber Lee thing, and when I was looking into the murder of the dentist in Ohio, the first thing I came across is how awful dispatchers are. And it's just like, well, I'm never going to be able to convince them what a dispatcher's job is. And I'm never going to be able to convince them that the dispatchers who handled these calls did them exactly the way that I would do it. And the way that I would do it is fine and perfectly ordained by my agency, because I've been doing it that way for 11 years. They have no idea what the job is, and they've made up their minds, and you'll never really change anyone's mind. There's a certain futility to that I'm really grappling with. Some people like you, maybe had open minds, or maybe you were just ambivalent or whatever, and we could talk about it. But there's a lot of people out there who have already made up their minds about Karen Reed, and they're never going to change their mind. But Drew is still up for it. You do not like his interview style. Eric's, well, Eric probably wasn't meant to ever be doing interviews on the show. The show could have had different formats, and I don't think interviews are great for Comp Center either. I don't think I have a great interview style. I don't mean to criticize Drew, but I don't think he has like a sterling interview style either. When we've had guests on the show, I don't think it's ever been like, it's not Joe Rogan compelling. You know what I mean? Like, we don't have that ability to get someone to talk and talk and talk and talk. And even with Catherine, the last person we had on the show, I tried to get her to talk about how moving the case, or how the case being moved to federal courts, would change things. I asked her, I'm like, so tell the audience what it means to shop jurisdictions and to change the landscape. And, what are some of the things that are going to be different moving from state to federal court? She answered none of those questions, not because she was being evasive. It's just, I didn't do a good job of really getting her to think about that and to talk about that. So it's on me. So I'm not exactly Joe Rogan. Should we just get into some memes? I should probably just do that. I appreciate everyone listening to me rant and rave and talk about other things. Let's move on. Oh no. I hope that I don't still have all the memes from last week in here. I think that I do. Uh-oh. There are no memes. There literally are no memes. So now I have to flapjack for the first time in 100 years. This will only take me a minute to load up. But I should have done this last night. I should have made sure that all the memes, the fresh memes, were uploaded. And not only that, uploaded, but suitably sorted so that I could go through it in a reasonable fashion. I like to go from the strong take political memes as a way of segueing, and then go into the straight absurdist stuff. And then from there, I kind of do the depressing stuff so that the show ends with everyone feeling very sad. So give me 1 minute. I just deleted all the memes from the previous week. Now I will upload all of this week's memes while you all sit patiently waiting for me to do something I should have done last night. Let's go back to the chats. Flapjacks. I have friends that are going hard on social media about this and that, and it's just not worth fighting with them. It's something that's just, I'm really burnt out on. I'm really burnt out on fighting people because, like I said with the civil rights legislation in JFK, it doesn't matter your position. Someone will take the opposite position. I'm like, how big of a historian are you that you're really, really pro LBJ? This guy that escalated Vietnam was such a lousy president. He quit. He didn't even run again in 68. This guy that a lot of people believe probably knew about Kennedy's assassination before it happened. But make sure you go to bat for that guy. And it's all about just seeing something that maybe you don't agree with and attacking. It was some interview with LBJ, and I'm just like, in the description of it was like what a great president he was with his great society stuff and his civil rights acts, and just like he gets a little too much credit for that. Congress, first of all, did those things, but it was also legislation that was Kennedy legislation that was sitting in committee when he died, and of course, no one was going to say no to Kennedy legislation after he was dead. But let's make sure LBJ gets the credit. Well, let's make sure that Congress doesn't get the credit. But he just fights me for no reason. It's very enervating. Opening my goddamn email. There better not be any goddamn emails in here. I think that's a real turn in life when, and then this will be hard to explain to young people, but email used to be the thing. Like, how you like texts and chats and all this stuff now that you have? There was a time even before instant messaging, if you even know what that is. I mean, it was emails, and you communicated via email, and everything was emails. And we have gone from people that want email to now being there better not be any goddamn emails in here. I think when you get to that point in life, you've really turned a corner. I keep my circle small. 100. Is that supposed to be 100%, or like when you read that, what does it mean? Like, I know that it means like someone's like in full agreement with you, or like you scored 100 on a test, maybe. I don't know. Not by choice, though. People do not enjoy being around me. That's why there's only 6 in the chats right now. I've been doing this so many years. I've been podcasting 3 years, and I've had a lot of people tell me that they like the way I podcast. I've had a lot of people tell me that, and then I will share this show with them, and then they'll be like, "Yeah, I'm not watching." I'm like, "Okay, you say you like the way that I podcast, but you don't watch." This is how you know that you really do have a limited appeal. Here's the thing that should have been ordered first if I had been diligent in my meme preparation. We were all Renee Nicole Good. Not me. I'm not a dead lesbian who tried to run over ice with my car because my dyke wife told me to. You do you, though. Again, it's the progressives trying to co-opt a fake identity of what, the symbol of Renee Nicole Good is, so that they can coalesce power and create riots across the country. Who's that remind you of? That's right. I still have this one loaded up. I never got rid of it. It has always been there. They're trying to create another George Floyd out of her. I will always succeed because I'm insane. A horse on top of a building for no reason. I'm trying to embrace this energy in 2026 that I'll succeed because I'm insane, Other people play no part in my success. Not that I need people to watch or anything. No, I'm just going to succeed because I'm insane. My son called me crying, "Dad, school ended 4 hours ago. I'm still waiting for you to pick me up." Click. I hung up. Weak pitch. No clear call to action. Didn't give me a reason to care. I went back to cold emailing billionaires. He'll have to learn a better way to get my attention if he wants my help. Maybe he should have cold emailed you. To regulate a toddler at bedtime, I wouldn't give an or force it. I'm not sure what that means. I wouldn't give in or force it. Okay, well, if you just read it, it makes sense. To regulate a toddler at bedtime, I wouldn't give in or force it. I would simply discuss the stakes of the issue with them calmly and rationally. Listen, buddy, you don't have to go to bed, but if we don't get any alone time, Mommy and Daddy will get a divorce, and it will be your fault. I can imagine telling a toddler this. I can't imagine being a parent. Me and my friends would have killed ET with hammers. I could tell you that much. I love the ET memes. Like there's one where it says, I found a gray alien in the woods and I gave him some Gatorade because he looked sick and he had a seizure and died. I think there's one more ET meme this week. I followed you because of a funny post some time ago, but it's been exciting to learn about your bleak personal life and extreme political views. That's me. I probably posted something funny one time to you guys. And since then, it's been about my bleak personal life and extreme political views. Is that a big turnoff? Is that something that's keeping me from succeeding? My jokes about how, like, I'm in a constant death grip with life itself, that I'm at the end of my own pitiful rope, hanging on to said rope with a greased up fist, hanging over the edge of eternity here. Is that stuff that's kind of like not funny to you? I find it hilarious. That kind of Charlie Brown-esque, if you watch Scrubs, Ted Buckland, played by the late Sam Lloyd, that kind of energy, where you're just so sad it's funny. I like that. Maybe other people don't like that. Maybe it's a niche thing. And then of course my extreme political views. I was talking to Allie yesterday, the day before, Allie in the Archives. That is a podcast I have been producing for 6 months. None of you knew that. But she is breaking away on her own, and I am no longer her producer, which is a good thing for me because she was not paying me either. But we were talking briefly, and it was actually the first time I'd ever had a face-to-face conversation with her. And she mentioned something about teaming up on podcasts before, and I'm just like, you probably don't want to team up with me because I'm a real extremist. And she goes, well, what are your views? I'm like, I'm just real conservative, just real, like, far out in the woods, Ted Kaczynski level conservative. And I explained it a few ways, and she's just like, yeah, I'm the opposite. I'm like, yeah, you don't want to appear on my show. Why would you want to do that? It would just be an embarrassment to you. So maybe that's why I don't succeed. My bleak personal life and my extreme political views. I'm leaning into it in 2026. I'm no longer trying to change anything. I'm just going to do more of me. Even though every week is like basically the last week that I do this. You make soup in a big bowl. You serve it in a smaller bowl, and then you convey it using a spoon to your mouth. But what is that spoon? It's simply a smaller bowl still. Maybe that's what I hate about soups, is that it's conveyed in a series of progressively smaller bowls. I don't like being made to feel like a cog in a machine, a part of an assembly line. Because now let's extrapolate a little bit further. So you got your big bowl that you cook it in, and your small bowl that you serve it in, and your little bowl that you eat it with. But now it's going into your head, which is like a big Panera meat bowl, and then into your stomach, which is a bowl. And then it goes in the toilet bowl. Do I even matter in that process? Does the soup even care about me? I don't know. Top 5 mafia bosses, crime bosses: Vito Genovese, Carlo Gambino, and of course, let us not forget Charles Entertainment Cheese. 1977 to current. Dad's second car crash this week. Oh, Dad's having a bad week. Why would they do this? I mean, I've got to believe that this is in a third world country. Because who's transporting a casket in a Honda CRV? I don't know. I hate babies with grown ass names. No, I ain't holding Walter. I actually feel the exact opposite. I think it was something that my generation did badly, was naming its children. Did you never notice that right around the people in my generation, once we started being, childbearing age, this would have been around 2003, 2004, 2005. We're starting to turn 20-ish. Do you realize how many Cadens there are all of a sudden? Every person's named Caden. It's like, I mean, every 10 years has like the top 5 most popular names. But we got to a point maybe 10 years ago, and maybe to continue this day, where we name our children things that just like are cute or fun, but are like, dude, your kid has to put that on a resume someday. That's their name? Braden? That's not a good name, you know? And you can, as an example, you can choose your own name that you hate, but it's just like, would you want to have that name? I think Walter's a great name. In fact, I had a dog named Walter. And the reason why I named him Walter is because when I went to the park, the dog park, and I knew I would have to call for him to come to me or chase him around, I didn't want to be like, Snuggles, come here, Snuggles, or whatever his name would be as a dog. I'm like, if I'm hollering a name, I'm going to halter like a man's name. Walt, let's go. You know, do you see how much like how commanding that is? That and Vault is the name, the German word for commander of the army. So, and a little bit of a zeitgeist, I guess. This was back in the time when Lost was a big TV show. Do you remember the TV show Lost? And there's a character on the show named Michael, and his son gets abducted, and he's in the water screaming, Walt! You know, it's kind of that moment. So, yes, you need to give babies grown-ass names because they will become grown-ass adults, and they will need grown-ass jobs. Please do not sabotage your child by giving them some stupid name. Love begins at butterflies, and it ends at benzodiazepines. From Allie, PhD, no less. That was a certified medical opinion. You guys been to Wikipedia lately? It's pathetic. It's pathetic at Wikipedia. Normally they do a little bit of an end of year, telethon, of some sort of campaign to get donations. It's continuous now. Wikipedia, please just give me $1. I'm begging you. Give me anything, please. I'm sorry to interrupt you. And they'll even like use your name and your location. So it'll be like, Jonathan, I see that you're using Wikipedia there from, West Nebraska or whatever state I'm in. I see that you're using Wikipedia from West Nebraska. Please, I'm asking you tonight, January 14th at 11:52 p.m. Please, I'm asking you to help keep Wikipedia going. Don't let Wikipedia become corporate. Like, well, Wikipedia is full of liars and people that would run me down with a car or pop me in the neck. Why am I going to give money to that? I just want to look up the hamburger's full name. Shut the fuck up. If I was the dad from ET, I came home and my kids had let their weird gray alien drink all my Coors banquet, I would let the Air Force take him away. Get him out of here. You drink all my Coors. It's the banquet beer. Imagine taking a puff on a Winston in between eating a Big Mac. That was real life. That happened. You used to be able to smoke at McDonald's. I have memories of that life. I'm an alien from another world trying to tell someone who's young, like, you used to be able to smoke at McDonald's. They don't get it. They don't understand that life. They don't know what's been taken away from them. A 24-hour Walmart. The smoking at McDonald's. A third thing. It's a terrible world that we live in now. I like this. ICE is our strongest ally in the Middle West, and they have the right to defend themselves. We talk about ICE like we talk about Israel all of a sudden. It just seems fine. Yelled downstairs, Mom, Dad's home. She did not find it as funny as I did. Cremated remains. Do they literally mail cremated remains with a tag on it that says cremated remains? I mean, I guess they would. How else would you get that? Like, if you needed to get that from Boston to LA, how would you do that? And I'm sure that for legal reasons, since you're literally transporting human remains, that it's got to be marked in such a fashion. But like, this guy is completely over his father's death. Did you guys ever see My Girl? Macaulay Culkin literally died because this girl got her first period. Shocking movie. Anyway, my best friend at my funeral. Where's his phone? He can't share memes without his phone. Circling back to people just fighting you for no reason. So I was fighting somebody in the comments on Instagram. And if you look at my Instagram, and I know most of you hate that, but I literally have a little line in my bio that says, if you're mad about the comment, thanks for being so mad that you checked me out. Don't forget to hit like and subscribe. I apologize for nothing. And so I was debating something with some guy. I think it was probably Islam or something. I don't even remember. But his comeback was, at least I don't post memes like an idiot, you know? And I'm just like, first of all, everyone but you on earth loves memes. You're the only one that doesn't love memes. But they get so mad at me that they go to my page to look for things to make fun of me for. That's Instagram. It's literally a playground in 6th grade where they were literally, they need to bully me, so they need to find out something that they think they can make fun of me for. Well, you post memes like an idiot. I've had other people like, says the man who draws silly cartoons and thinks he's a podcast influencer. Ha ha, good luck with that, idiot. You were so mad at a comment that I made. You're so mad that I'm right, or that you can't say anything in reply to that because you know that I'm correct. I stand correct. That's my Instagram handle. They go to my page on Instagram to find something to make fun of me for. It might come back to that is whenever they say like, oh, at least I don't post memes like an idiot. I was just like, thanks for being mad enough that you actually had to check me out. You were so mad that you had to go look at my page, and then they'll say something, and then I'll ignore it at this point. I'm just like, haha, you mad, I just hit them back with that. Because I'm just as childish as they are, and I waste my life as much as they do. And that's why I'm saying no to any more Instagram fights. I'm doing the best I can. Yesterday, I was only down to one. I only had one yesterday. It used to be that my personal policy was that I won't write any comments, but I'll heart other people's things. I'll encourage other people who are saying the things I agree with. Done. Getting done with that. All right, let's make sure we're doing all the comments, even though you guys are all just talking to each other. As I open my email every morning, there better not be any goddamn emails in here. Sorry, it's a rule that John makes me disagree with everyone regarding Karen Reed. I actually agree. I don't make you do anything. If it's 100%, why don't they put the percent sign? Talia says, I have my own stitched together theory about the JFK assassination. Butter Queen, where have you been? You say, I wish work wouldn't get in the way of most of the lives. What can I do? When do you work? I will change my schedule around you. I have missed you so much. That's not personal, but like so many people are no longer watching me, or they're watching later. And I want to make this show live for you when you can watch. So when I say, Butter Queen, that I miss you, I also miss you, Chase. And really just the two of you. It is personal at that point. Butter Queen and Chase. After that, it's not sincere at all. Who did it, Tally? She has her own JFK theory. I've been listening to JFK documentaries and books for the past 2-3 months. That's all that I'm listening to right now. I watched Oliver Stone's documentary, and I was like, wow, I knew all of this. It was good to watch. I enjoyed it. It was really entertaining, but it's like I guess I've already done deeper dives. I really can't be casually entertained by a cheap History Channel documentary about JFK because it doesn't tell me anything I don't know. We limit it, saying the kids have ruined our social life and our ability to have fun anymore. Kids have destroyed our good things. Tally says, I think one of Oswald's colleagues from the same extremist Cuba group got to kill Shop. I think Ruby shot Oswald because he had an association with JFK's family because they used to sell booze. Continued. Ruby was a local saloon owner that shot Oswald for his love for the Kennedys. This is the idea that Jack Ruby went out and shot Oswald because he had love for the Kennedys is absurd. He hated the Kennedys. It's pretty well documented too, but it's something that most people have been led to believe. Ruby had mafia ties, and He was probably directed to do it by the mafia because Oswald was the loose end. Oswald couldn't go to trial because he said in the few minutes that he had in front of the press, which is bizarre if you think about it, we're really going to march out a presidential assassin in front of the press. Do you think we would do that today? We didn't. But then he said that he was a patsy. Very few people who are guilty will attempt to off the cuff establish what their path to innocence will be. Like when Karen Reed ran over John O'Keefe, she wasn't out there saying he was inside the house the whole time, not laying in the street. Like that was not something that came out very early on. But Oswald was saying, I'm a patsy right from go. And so he was going to have an opportunity at trial to talk about who he was a patsy with. It's possible that he may have even uncovered if he was being handled by the CIA or the mafia or the alienated Cuban exiles who were supposed to retake Cuba and didn't. It may have been possible that because he was betrayed by them, and that he would have exposed everyone in that operation in open court. So he had to go. I think what's really interesting about Jack Ruby and whether or not he was used as a purposeful instrument of destruction, of killing Oswald, is that you also need to consider the incidentality of police officer J.D. Tippit. Okay, so Oswald does the smartest thing ever. He runs out of the Texas Book Depository. Whether he killed Kennedy or not, he runs out of there, and it makes him look guilty because he's the only member of the Texas Book Depository staff that's no longer there that day. And so they account for everyone. They're like, well, the only one who's not here now is Oswald. And then a description goes out, an all points bulletin for Oswald goes out to Dallas police, and police officer J.D. Tippit comes across him, and he thinks this is the possible Kennedy assassin. Okay, so it would make sense to me that the idea is that when you're talking with Oswald and you're setting up this assassination, what's the getaway plan? There has to be a getaway plan, right? Like you're going to make a rendezvous in the Texas State Theater with your contact who's going to put you on a boat to Cuba. Never mind that they're going to shoot you in the Gulf of America and throw your body overboard, and you're never ever going to go to Cuba because you're a loose end. But he might have believed that he was going to Cuba. He had attempted to get a visa to go to Cuba via Mexico City not long before the assassination attempt. But the incidentality of J.D. Tippit, was it the plan for J.D. Tippit or any police officer to simply kill him? Could they have guessed that Tippit would not survive that encounter, that somehow this idiot Oswald would actually manage to shoot Tippit and kill him? You could not plan for that because now you're looking at, well, now the Dallas police has a grudge and they're not going to take Oswald alive. And in fact, when they arrested Oswald, they beat the shit out of him. So you couldn't plan for Tippit. Not him specifically, but was it just the general belief that if Oswald's running out of the book depository with every Texas lawman there looking for him, that eventually he's just going to get killed? Rather than be taken alive. And then, so failing that, Oswald's in custody for, I believe, 48 hours before they attempted to move him to the city jail. And Jack Ruby gets in there. And then Jack Ruby's such a weird thing, too, because the chief of the Dallas police said, that there were some concerns about Oswald's safety. He said openly, I don't think that they're going to attempt to take our prisoner from us, but they were going to transport him in an armored car, which was not at all unusual. I mean, which was very unusual that they were going to transport him to the jail in an armored car. So they had some sort of belief that was going to happen. And they kept people out of the area in which he was being transported. The media was there, but why was Jack Ruby allowed to come in as a saloon owner? Why can you just be a businessman? And that is your sole credential, other than the fact that you're chummy with the cops. Perhaps there's some sort of protection racket going on with whatever's going down at his burlesque house with the police. But why were they so chummy with Ruby that he was just allowed to waltz in with a gun and blow Oswald away? But Jack Rubenstein had well-documented ties to the mafia, and the mafia hated Bobby Kennedy. If you ask me, my pet theory about why JFK had to die is because the mafia actually wanted Bobby Kennedy off their back. They wanted to get rid of Robert Kennedy. But you can't get rid of Attorney General Robert Kennedy while his brother's the president, because then you got a pissed off John who's going to come after you and appoint somebody else who's going to make the mafia his everyday project. So you can't get rid of Robert Kennedy without getting rid of John. After John was killed, after JFK was killed, what happened to RFK? He was like immediately replaced. Johnson came in, he was sworn in. And at that point, I mean, Robert F. Kennedy had no power to do anything. He was involved in everything at that point, even the foreign affairs, the stuff that had nothing to do with the attorney general. He was advising John on. And after John was killed, Robert F. Kennedy was persona non grata in Washington, D.C. He was not attorney general anymore. There was an acting attorney general. And all of a sudden, all the heat that was on the mafia was gone. And why would the mafia hate RFK so much? Is it because RFK is a really good person and he really wants to dismantle the mafia as a good attorney general should? No. It's because the Kennedy family already had an agreement with the mafia that was, I'm sure Taliu, was a longstanding agreement. Joseph Kennedy had plenty of dealings with the mob during the time of Prohibition. And so the Kennedys have a pact with the mafia, and John and Robert Kennedy, they're Irish. Okay, so they understand the mafia in the same way that they would understand the Irish mafia. They don't understand the Sicilian mafia. The Sicilian mafia doesn't talk. The Sicilian mafia just shoots. And I think that that's what happened. I think that the mafia was mad at Robert F. Kennedy. I think for them it was a point of honor. It had nothing to do with how effective Robert Kennedy was. The mere fact that that they had been able to organize, probably the mafia was probably involved in organizing unions to help the Kennedys get elected. And then as soon as they're in office, they turn their back on the mafia. You don't do that, right? And the mafia is the one who's ballsy enough to take down a president. They had advised the CIA on how to do regime changes in other countries. The CIA was already doing that in Indonesia and other places, Iran, Operation Ajax under Eisenhower. They were getting pro tips on how to reorganize your enemy's structure, your hierarchies of opposing mafia families, of opposing countries' leadership. They were taking pro tips from the mafia. And so I think they didn't like Robert Kennedy. They wanted him reduced to nothing, but you can't take out Robert Kennedy without his big brother John sending someone out to replace him. So Jack Ruby definitely did not love the Kennedys. He didn't do it because he cared about Jackie. That is I know, I understand that you and most people believe that, but that is a joke. He was basically what Ruby was is something called a torpedo. A torpedo is sort of your next level henchman or goon, someone who's willing to go to prison to get the job done. And it's usually because there's some sort of leverage over your family or something. But Ruby was willing to be a torpedo to take out Oswald because Oswald could not be allowed to testify. That's what I think. Nobody asked me, but I still talked about it. Be you, John. That's what we like. That's what 7 of you like. 7 of you in a world of 7.9 billion or more. I understand that there's probably going to be a good half of the planet that's not going to like me. So let's reduce the number down to of people who could plausibly like me. Let's take it down to just a reasonable 4 billion. I'm still pulling in 7 people. I've always subscribed to the CIA Johnson Mafia theory. Yep. Everything is bull. Oh, Butter Queen, you got me good. Everything is bull. There's some guy who admitted to making the kill shot who came to the parade with the aim of shooting JFK. That's probably just some guy who wants attention. My wife's sister's baby is Walter. We call him Wally, though. My wife gave our girls old-timey names. I'm in favor of that. I like old-timey names. I do think Johnson was pleased to get rid of Kennedy no matter how it happened. You should watch, for those of you who like Dr. G, he does an analysis of Lyndon Johnson giving the first nationally televised speech, like prepared written speech to the country. And Dr. G, just to get you to watch it, I guess he comes to the conclusion after watching that Johnson probably knew about the assassination before it happened. You should absolutely watch Dr. G. You should absolutely watch his takeaway of, it's a combined episode. It's Oswald talking about being a patsy and Johnson telling the country, like, We can't have that day in Dallas back. And ours is not to question why. Ours is only to question what's the way forward. And he's just like, really? We're not allowed to question why the president was killed? I think Johnson totally misunderstood. I think they thought they had done a great job, that it would be the single most consuming question in the history of crime in this country. It was who killed JFK. Caden, Jaden, Aiden, yep, all those terrible names. What's interesting is that Kennedy's combating the commies paled in comparison to the wishes of Johnson. You have to remember at that time, Kennedy was seen as being weak on communism. And for his handling of Cuba, the Bay of Pigs, he didn't want to commit Americans to what we would now call regime change in Cuba. He didn't want to do that. I think he had seen what happened not in Vietnam, in Korea, and saw that as a massive waste, and saw establishing regime change in Cuba as simply to the benefit of American businessmen and certain people who had interests in Batista, which was the regime before Castro. And it was a very cynical ploy to not to establish democracy or to free a people, but to get money. And I think he wasn't willing to risk the lives of American servicemen to do that. He's okay with these other people who already want to go risk their lives. These Cuban exiles want to go risk their lives. Fine. We'll train them up. Fine. We'll drop them off. But we're not sending airplanes over there. We're not getting involved in this. This is your business. We'll we'll help you show up on the front door, but we're not getting involved. And Dulles wanted to put him into a position where he was in for a penny and in for a pound. He's like, well, you're already committed. You might as well commit all the way. Send in the air support. Kennedy said, no, I'd rather fail and look weak on communism than get us embroiled into a proxy war with the Soviet Union by way of Cuba. In the same way we were in a proxy war with the Soviet Union by way of Korea. We're not doing that. All the generals wanted to go to war. All the generals wanted to fight. They always wanted to paint Kennedy as I think, am I allowed to say this on YouTube? But they called the Kennedy brothers a couple of F slurs, is what they called them. They've really viewed them as far lefty, weakling, limp-wristed guys in the war against communism. They believed strongly in Truman doctrine, domino theory, that if a country becomes in danger to falling to communism, that one domino will fall at a time until the whole world is communistic. Kennedy, when he was a senator, had already gone over to Vietnam and had talked to people on the ground about what the nature of the war in Vietnam was, because it was already raging in the 50s between the French and the Viet Cong. And what he found out is that this is not really a war about communist ideology. This is a war about ending French colonialism in Vietnam. And he understood that the war looked bad to the Western world because the revolutionary forces that were fighting in Vietnam were communist. But he said, really, these guys are just sick of the French. And frankly, the French can't afford to keep Vietnam as a colony because they lost so much personnel and money fighting Hitler. Getting dominated by Hitler ruined their ability to hold on to their colonial holdings throughout the world. That was the same thing was happening to Britain, too. Britain and France throughout the world, Spain, Portugal, all these huge empires of the 1700s, they'd all crumbled. They'd been unable to save themselves. And Kennedy, as much as he didn't like communism, and it's true that he didn't, he also believed in self-determination. And he said, well, if these people don't want to be under the French rule and what they want to be is communist, then it's not necessarily a bad thing. And look at Vietnam and our relations today. They're still a communist country. Do we care? They're a vacation spot. Is where Donna Adelson wants to flee to. We literally have people who are trying to get away from criminal prosecution for murder. They will literally try to go to Vietnam. And I think Kennedy had the foresight to see that just because a country becomes communistic doesn't mean they're going to have an antagonistic relationship with the West. Look at China. Nixon went to China, big communist country. Yeah, China's not really our friend, but they're also our biggest trading partner. Like, we have full diplomatic relations with China. Kennedy foresaw that you can have a world that chooses communism, which is a bad system, but it's not necessarily going to be antagonistic to us. He also realized that a country can go through regime change, and it's not necessarily going to become communistic. There's more than two ideologies in the world. It's not just capitalism, communism. Those are the big ones, but there's other ideologies. And he wasn't willing to have us get involved in Vietnam or Cuba, and the generals who wanted to fight and their friends in the military-industrial complex who wanted to profit from this, and the CIA, who wanted a blank check to be able to do anything they wanted throughout the world, really wanted to go to war in Cuba. And once they put their eyes on the much bigger stake that was Vietnam, they stopped giving a shit about Cuba. I mean, we didn't do anything about Cuba after Kennedy died. Why? Because the very same day that LBJ took office, he changed the general orders regarding our practices in Vietnam. The standing order from JFK regarding Vietnam is that we're not going to have any active engagement, no boots on the ground. That same day that Johnson became president, he struck all that out of the general orders. He basically set it up so that we would have troops on the ground in Vietnam from day one. So that was the main difference between them in terms of how they wanted to deal with the commies. So commies killing Kennedy allowed Johnson to get the gloves off. I don't think the commies killed Kennedy. That's the thing. I don't think somebody like Castro would have stood to gain from killing Kennedy. He knew that Kennedy was a stabilizing force. Kennedy had already spoke to him in person. They had already talked about normalizing relations. The person who probably felt the most sadness and dread upon hearing that Kennedy died was probably Castro, because he knew that Kennedy didn't control the more conservative forces, the deep state in his own government. He knew that Kennedy had talked to people in France and others saying that, like, I don't necessarily know who's in charge of this. Operation Mongoose was happening. People were trying to depose and kill Castro. I mean, he knew that there were people in the American government who were trying to do that, and he knew that Kennedy didn't sanction that stuff. Otherwise, Kennedy would never have met with him. So he knew that Kennedy was a stabilizing force. He knew that Kennedy was someone who was willing to make himself look bad for peace. Kennedy, despite being young and despite being liberal, ended the Cuban Missile Crisis. He prevented nuclear war. He fell on his sword for the Bay of Pigs invasion and then got rid of the people in his own outfit, Allen Dulles et al., who had set up the Bay of Pigs. So he knew that Kennedy was committed to sweeping change in the federal government in order to broker peace. And Castro, for all his blustering, is someone who appreciated that, because you can stand tall and rattle your saber, and you have to do that in order to get people to stand behind you and to coalesce around you and to foment power in Cuba. But he knows that he's just this little tiny island 90 miles away from us, and that if we send the Air Force, we're gonna turn Cuba into a parking lot in 20 minutes. He knows that. Of course, he partners with the Soviet Union as his big brother, saying, "Hey, don't do this to us, otherwise, Khrushchev's going to come over here and have a problem with it." But he appreciated Kennedy as a stabilizing force, and having Kennedy as an ally, having Kennedy and Khrushchev as allies, would bring tremendous esteem and power to the little island of Cuba. Now all of a sudden you're a player. You're best friends with your neighbor, America, but politically and ideologically, you're best friends with the other first world country, the Soviet Union. It was a great place to be in for him. And just Kennedy going away, even if he didn't like Kennedy, it's like, well, you no longer have the devil. Now you're going in with this other people that you don't know how to deal with. And if not for Vietnam, Cuba would have suffered greatly from that. Wikipedia begs for money at a level that makes Israel look normal. Israel doesn't have to beg. They, we're the United States of Israel. They might as well just have a key card to the American Treasury. I don't think anyone cared to hear that long of a Kennedy take. A Big Mac that was large. Yeah, back in the day. Oh, look who's here. It's Micah. I think I made fun of his name earlier, so that's not cool. That'll make sense now. E.T. was just the kid's way of coping. They found the mom's toy in their drawer. I don't remember that part of that movie. They actually called cremated remains cremains. I did know that. Who has time to say cremated remains? I don't have time to say that. I can't believe how little you have to say to agitate people on social media. Well, We're all looking to fight. We all haven't. We're all angry, is what it is, and we're all looking for an outlet, and we're all looking for a punching bag, convenient targets wherever you can find them, and we don't care about some other human being on the other end of Instagram. So you're all in. You wouldn't necessarily talk that way to someone else in person because that person's a person to you. They're humanized to you, but also, you're physically accountable for whatever shit that is that you want to say. But we're all very angry about the world we live in, and the algorithm and social media makes us angry. And then the people are right there. So it's very convenient. The people are right there waiting to fight you over the issue that you are mad about. I missed you too. You work from 6 a.m. to 2 p.m. Pacific time. So yeah, you work. So basically, you get off of work when I go to work. So there's no hope. All right. Well, Butter Queen, hopefully something can happen someday where somehow I'm reaching you in the evening. I'm not criticizing you. It's fine. Lunch is whenever I want it to be. How is butter, by the way? Is butter good? I mean, like the actual dairy product. I don't mean you. I mean, I've also missed lives because of depression. I can understand that, man. It's that time of year. Yeah, you don't want to do anything. You don't want to get up. You don't want to be awake. You don't want to be alive. And it's not that you want to be dead necessarily. I hope that you don't feel that way, but you just don't want to do anything. I feel that way all the time. Butter Queen, what I've always wanted the show to be, if you're still here, and it's okay if you're not, is I've always wanted to be the show for depressed people. Like not a show that tries real hard to make you feel better and kind of embraces the sad things. But I think happy people hate that. I think happy people hate being brought down. I probably shouldn't keep going about Kennedy. I should do a whole episode about that at some point. Ruby knew the 5-0 when Weasel was way in during the press conference. Yeah. Exploiting those relationships. Yeah. Dr. G did a show analyzing 3 interviews related to the assassination. He said Oswald looked disappointed and influenced my idea. Yeah. Well, I think that Oswald, when he found out that he was charged, he realized I've been betrayed. I think that was the moment when he realized I'm the one that's taking the fall for this. And that's why he started saying, I'm a patsy. It's because that's when he realized he was. He wasn't a guy that was going to be charged with the death of police officer Tippett. He was a suspect in the presidential murder, and he was going to be the only one. He was going to be the fall guy. Lest we forget that Joe Kennedy enlisted the assistance of the mafia. Yeah. I think that I covered that. I think that you probably spoke about it, and then I was talking about it. We've got that synergy there. I do have to go to the gym at some point. I should probably wrap up the show. My thought, he had loyalty to Joe Kennedy is all. Everything is bullshit. I was surprised to learn that LG Bay was a ladies' man. I was not surprised to learn that. The war in Ukraine has taught me that Russia isn't nearly the enemy we were told it was. I don't think Russia was the enemy we were told. I don't think Germany was the enemy we were told it was in World War II. Patton was coming out and saying that we fought the wrong side after we destroyed Berlin and he saw the Soviets taking over. Patton said we fought the wrong side of this war. And then what happened to Patton? He was killed in a car accident like a week later after he said that. You really want to do a deep dive conspiracy, go someplace down a rabbit hole nobody's gone down before. You should look into the possible assassination of General Patton. Bumped up the kickbacks to the politicians both here and in the U.S. and the defense contractors getting those juicy contracts. Well, yeah, I mean, we sent all this money to Ukraine and then all this money's missing. Where did that go? If there's any president we ought to be scooping up in a 15-minute operation with black ops, I think it ought to be Zelensky. If Joe Jr. hadn't died in World War II, JFK may never have become president, is my understanding. You could say a lot of things about alternate history. I work with a lady a few years older than me that fled Vietnam in the dark of night and remembers the gunshots and bombs going off when she was a child. Yeah, it was probably scary. My coworker was the ultimate immigrant story because she had a husband who worked at factory jobs and their kids are now professionals. I think one child is a lawyer. My law partner's buddy fled Yugoslavia. Buddy from college, his parents did the same thing. He's a VP of a big company, just like you were saying. I don't mind people coming here and embracing the dream. I mind people coming here and opening up fake daycares, if that wasn't obvious. Shorty Rides woke up and she's here. Butter is great as always. Well, Butter, whenever someone tells me that they're depressed, I don't tell them, I hope you feel better or feel good soon. Because I think that cheapens what you're feeling. So I'm not going to say, hope you feel better soon. I hope it clears up and goes away. I don't know you personally, but I know you well enough to know that there are people who love and care about you. And I know that what you do in the world is important. And so I know it's not easy. I hope you endure. And that if you have any problem enduring, that you get the help that you need. But what is also irritating about depression is you can't casually talk about depression without somebody thinking that you're going to kill yourself. Like that's just like a straight line between feeling depressed or being depressed or feeling depressed. There is a difference, and then just you killing yourself. It's very frustrating because it's like you don't want to have a conversation about suicide because it's not even on your mind. It's the furthest thing from you. But then you talk about it. Now they give you that look like they're worried that they have to have an uncomfortable conversation with you about suicide. So I appreciate that you mentioned that you're depressed. I am also depressed. I feel depressed often. It's actually just part of my makeup. And it's okay to be depressed. As long as it's not something that's hurting you, I think it's all right. But I'm sorry if it's interfering with the things that you would like to be doing instead. Butter is salted. She's up for the day. She doesn't want to be. It's a little early. She does it all with a USDA shield. I wonder if she has one of those little wallets that has the shield in it. I want her to be like a butter cop. She's a butter queen, so I mean, she's already kind of ranked higher than cop, but Irish butter and grass-fed are used as training of what butter shouldn't taste like. Interesting. That's very interesting to me because I was in the store recently and I've been looking for, you're going to hate me for this, Butter Queen. I'm sorry. But for I can't believe it's not butter. So I know you don't appreciate that. The doctor says my cholesterol is high and that I need to get off of dairy products. I'm trying to figure out if cholesterol is good for me and will make me bulletproof, So I'm like debating maybe the doctor's wrong and I should really lean into cholesterol. But someone at the grocery store says, hey, you should check out that Kerrygold stuff. And I'm like, yeah, maybe I'll do that. And I looked at the Kerrygold stuff and it was like really expensive. But I trust you above some rando in the grocery store, Butter Queen. So you tell me, for my health, what should I be doing? Is it, I can't believe it's not butter, this grass-fed butter or Kerrygold butter, the stuff that you're talking about that is not what butter tastes like? I would love to, I could probably sit down with you and like just have a long conversation about butter because I dabble in the esoteric and I have many areas of curiosity and a few areas of expertise. And I would love to curate your own expertise for my own, so that at some future point I can be an expert on butter and someone can say, wow, John, you know a lot about butter. And instead of saying it's because I know a woman who works for the USDA, I will just say, I know everything. Like that's really my long-term plan. John's theory of depression may be correct because I've been treated for depression for 35 years. So I need to challenge your thoughts is a big step. John, she says, no, don't get seed oils in it. I guess you were not happy to hear about I can't believe it's not butter. That is hilarious. I guess bad butter tastes still like it. My diet's made up of almost exclusively dairy. Yeah, I'm hearing Aaron Rodgers gave up on dairy. All right, let's do the rest of the memes. I need to go to the gym today. I didn't mean to be having like a long conversation about butter or JFK. This is why I can't succeed on YouTube because my shows are about anything. Like I talked about Renee Nicole Good, I talked about JFK, and I'm talking about butter now. YouTube looks at this and be like, who do I feed this to? Who's the Renee Good JFK butter crowd? There's not a Venn diagram where one person fits in all those other than me. So it knows to show the show to me. Anyway, where were we at? We already did these and these. You guys remember this? When you used to have to clean your mouse? Take off the thing, pull out the ball, swab the thing, wash the thing. The second wave of sleep after waking up too early the first time. This is probably getting both me and Butter Queen. You know, they should build a separate grocery store for people who have actually purchased food before, know how to push a cart, and possess at least an ounce of spatial awareness. I was literally rammed once at a grocery store by a guy with a cart. This is 2020. Everyone was really wound up. And I said, hey, dude, that's fucking assault. And it was pretty nuts. I can't remember how the interaction ended, but like I walked up to him and like he seemed like he was apologizing and then like held out his hand and we were shaking hands. And then he said something to me about like something bad that I did. And I'm just like, yeah, fuck you. What are you doing? You rammed me with a cart. Like I was willing to make peace with you, but then you're like some asshole. You're the Packers kicker. Little football meme there for you. I already did that one. You know, like the class 2 driver's license that I should have because I'm a bad driver. There should be a grocery store just for good grocery shoppers. While on Zoom, I received a message from the host. While I appreciate you staying muted, we can see exactly what you're thinking based on your facial expressions. I'm going to ask you to turn off your video as well. Thank you. I don't know how to not be this person. I'm that guy. People can always tell what I'm thinking and feeling. One of my coworkers said in an oblique way the other day that he can feel my angry stares. I was in the room when someone was talking about sending him a 5-pound stare. He's like, I can always feel it because he knows that I'm doing that behind his back. People are more sensitive and I ought to be nicer or at least control myself. Toss the darts, treat the wounded, tally the points. Repeat until only one child remains. Something tells me this would really appeal to Salamander. I don't know why. This meme kind of screams Salamander. Why does it smell like my uncle's garage in here? Cigarettes and gasoline. I think Felony would also like that. I've been offered drugs and alcohol more times than I've been offered a hug. I've been offered exactly one drug. And then I don't think anyone's ever offered me alcohol. It's always understood that I need to pay for my alcohol. But, no one's really offering me hugs. When someone says you can't be both passive aggressive and nice, holding the door slightly open for people. This is something I would do. Rate my setup. This guy has pizza and pasta on a plate right in the middle of his keyboard. I know people at work who need this because they just fucking dump their fucking Taco Supreme into the keyboard. And then I have to use that keyboard. I actually got my own keyboard at work. I bring it to work because I don't want to use theirs. This oil is no longer my problem. Follow me for life tips and life hacks. Yeah, putting it down a porta-john is a good way to get rid of oil. However, I just poured it on the ground. That's where it came from. While the shooting was completely justified, I do believe I should start slaughtering liberals for no reason at all. So, in this case, it was justified. However, they should just continue doing it without justification, says Alaric the Barbarian. First day as a hostage negotiator. Spelled that. Taking the phone. Yellow. Loud explosion from the bank. Bro, quit letting the darkness consume you. You're scaring the hose. I would say that to Butter Queen today. Don't let the darkness consume you because you're scaring the hose. Hey, sorry for how I acted when our plans slightly changed. So long as everything from here on goes exactly as I've planned forever, I won't be like that again. I also need to conform to expectations and plans. Credit card chip machines. Oh, my Lord. Do not remove your card. Do not. Hey, look at me. Do not remove your card. Take out your card immediately or I'm burning this place to the ground. The other thing that I do is like when they're ringing this stuff up, I go ahead and put the card in because I'm like, why would it matter, the timing? And it'll say, remove card immediately. I'm like, seriously? Remove card. And then it's like, well, now you can put it in. And I'm like, what is the deal? Why are you particular about when this thing gets put in there? By the way, chatters, if you start to try to make this sexual, I will end this show without saying goodbye to you. Am I right, though, about the credit card machine? I support women divorcing narcissists. Does that appeal to you, Talio? Does that appeal to you, other female members of the audience? I support women divorcing narcissists. Can you imagine being married to a man that is only concerned with his needs, his happiness, and completely disregards his partner's needs and happiness? That would be horrible. It would be like being married to a woman. He supports women divorcing narcissists because all women are narcissists and it's not fun to be married to them. How the NFL should be divided by the birds, the cats, the horses, the leaders, the thieves, the animals, the big things. Titans, Giants, Bills, Jets, and then the leftovers, Texans, Browns, 49ers, Packers. I don't hate this. The idea of the Cowboys being in the NFC horses division with the Colts, the Broncos, and the Chargers. I wouldn't hate that division. I think that would be a better division than the one I have. I think we could also win reliably in that division. Clark Kent removes glasses. Freddie Prinze Jr. is, wow, I never realized how beautiful you are. I literally went on my first date was to one of these movies where it was the girl was a nerd and no one knew how sexy and hot she was. And the nerdy girl's trying to help the guy get the sexy girl or whatever. And then, true love's in front of him the entire time because she takes off her glasses, You read a book on that. Well, that's cool. I understood it innately from birth. This is what I want to do with knowledge from Butter Queen. I want to appropriate her butter knowledge. And then when someone says something about butter, they're like, yeah, I read somewhere, the cholesterol is real bad for you. I'm like, yeah, you read a book on that. Okay, well, I've always understood it, just sort of, innately, I've always known. I didn't have to read a book. You misspelled aisle, so I won't give you the time of day on that one, Lauren. Aisle with an A. I-S-L-E is a synonym for island. Aisle in a grocery store is spelled with an A, people. Any butter is better than I can't believe it's not butter. All right. So I've risked all and lost again. Classic John. For my health, though, I know. All right. I won't be doing any more. I can't believe it's not butter. I got 2 people in here who are yelling at me about it. I won't be. I'm swearing it off. I'm going back to nothing, I guess, because I'm not allowed to have butter either. I can't have margarine. Salamander's here. It's like I spoke her name and she appeared. We took a lot of different flavor and texture defects as long as it tastes just like butter without tasting anything like grass or malt. I don't want it to taste like malt. I'm sorry to the hoes. Sorry to all the hoes down there for consuming you with my darkness. I think it's grass and malt are the characteristics I want. Grass and malt in your butter? All right. Butter here that isn't grass-fed and is and finished is waxy. Gilligan's Isle. All right, guys, that's it for me. I need to go to the gym. I need to get something done today. I've gone to the gym and worked out super hardcore the last couple of days. Just as a reminder, Comm Center will be seen on a completely different channel for no reason this week. It will be on Forensic Room. Drew will be there. I was going to be there, but I don't think that I'm going to be there. So go to the Forensic Room. Check out Drew Breezy. He's going to be doing more Karen Reed stuff, which I know you love to see. But just go over there, and you know what would be great? This is actually a real call to action. I know it seems cheap, like, oh, Comm Center's not on Comm Center. Oh, I have to go look at the Forensic Room to watch Drew this week. What I am urging all of you to do, all of you who really love us, I want you to show up in the chats on the Forensic Room. And I want you to talk up the comm center as much as possible, because the real reason Drew is going over there is he's trying to attract a new audience to help us succeed as a podcast channel. That's the strategy. He also wants to talk about Karen Reed, but he also wants to be in front of a new audience and appeal to new people to help them help our channel grow. So if you love me, if you love Drew, if you love only one of us, show up in the Forensic Room on Thursday night, put in the chats how much you love Comm Center, constantly talk up Drew. There are going to be haters in that audience that are going to be dogging on Drew. The free Karen Reed people are going to be there. They're going to be insulting him and chiding him. I want Drew to show up on Thursday night with all of the commies in the audience, protecting him, defending him, challenging the free Karen Reed people. I want you to show up in force. And, even though I can only get 5 people, I am asking all 5 of you to watch the Forensic Room on Thursday and make it known in the comments that commies stand tall. Commies walk as one. Commies love the Comm Center. 1,000 episodes, 1,000 years of Comm Center. All that stuff that we randomly say for no reason. So make sure you're going to Forensic Room on Thursday. Okay? Please. I will also try to be there, even though I don't want to be there. But I'll try. Please show up and support Drew. It's important to Drew. It's important to me for all that we're doing. I wish you guys the best. For those of you who are depressed, endure. Carry on. Do what you need to do to get through this life. I understand why you're depressed. I have gotten a load of this life. I am generally not impressed by people or by circumstances, and I know why you might feel that way. And even if it's for no particular reason, I want to tell you that feeling depressed is okay. If you want to feel better, that's fine, but you don't necessarily need to feel better. You can just be depressed if you want to be, and I'll be depressed with you. And I will sit in the gloom on a cloudy day with you, and I will sigh and wonder why things are the way they are. And I will just do my best to understand you, not try to fix you, not try to change you. You don't make me uncomfortable if you're depressed, because I'm depressed too. And if you want to talk to me about why you feel depressed without me trying to send you to BetterHelp or 988 or 211 or these things, and you just want to have a rational discussion about why you feel the way that you do, without me trying to silver line it. Well, at least you have your family, or at least you have your job, at least this, at least that. I'm not going to fucking do that, because those statements, silver lining statements, have zero empathy at all. If you want someone who understands what it's like to be depressed without well-wishing you and giving you vacuous feedback about how life really is great and how life really is wonderful, I'm the guy that gets that. I don't know how to make that podcast out of that, but I just wanted to say that to anyone that might feel depressed, that it is okay. And I just want you to endure. All right, guys, that's it for me. I'm going to go to the gym, and I'm going to try to make something of myself, because it's what's on the outside that matters most. Nobody cares about what's on the inside. Doesn't matter if I'm a good person or a person in progress or getting better. It only matters what you can see. Focus on that for 2026. Can't even say that with a straight face. All right, guys, thank you for showing up. The only thing sadder than 4 people here would have been 0 people here. So thank you. I appreciate it. I wish all of you a good day. Remember, Forensic Room, Thursday night, and we'll catch you back here in the future.